morning. That being said, I would like to welcome everybody to Integrative Behavioral Health. I am your host, Dr. Donnelly Snipes, and today we are talking about distress tolerance. Distress tolerance is not a activity that you do in order to avoid, suppress, get rid of pain and distress forever. What it's designed to do is help you to tolerate something that cannot be changed, at least not be changed in the moment that you want to have it changed. You may have to waiting on test results, waiting on your child to be born, waiting on hearing back about a job interview. There are a lot of things that don't give us immediate gratification, and we have some anxiety while we're waiting for those results or for those answers to come to us. Distress tolerance helps us tolerate that anxiety until we can find a resolution. It also helps us tolerate things that just plumb can't be changed. Maybe you were in a relationship and it broke up. And yes, it feels awful. And there are obviously things that you need to work through. You need to grieve. But it's also helpful to have distress tolerance skills that can help you get a respite from that grief, even if it's for an hour or for 30 minutes during the day, so you don't feel like you are being drowned in misery, quote, all the time. Distress tolerance assists you basically in down-regulating your threat response system, your HPA axis. When you do this, it helps so that whatever distress you're experiencing doesn't disrupt your sleep. Even if you've got something stressful going on at work or at home or whatever, it's important that you are able to downregulate that threat response system so you can get quality sleep. Otherwise, you are going to wake up and it's going to be even harder to deal with life on life's terms. It's going to be even harder to learn, to remember, and to think outside of the box, think flexibly about ways to solve problems. And it's going to suppress your immune system. Downregulating that threat response system also prevents you from disrupting your gut microbiome. When you're stressed, and most of us know this, when we are stressed, our tummies get upset. And that actually causes changes in the gut microbiome and a proliferation sometimes of bacteria that are designed to help us with the fight or flee response, but also get stuff out so we are not having to try to digest food. Rest and digest is the opposite of fight or flee. Your body doesn't do both at the same time very well. When we downregulate our HPA axis, it increases positive neurotransmitters, and distress intolerance activities, some of them actually are geared towards helping you increase those positive neurotransmitters like serotonin, oxytocin, and GABA. When you are not in that fight or flight mode, you have improved cognitive flexibility. When you are in fight or flight mode, you tend to have tunnel vision. So it's hard to really see the forest for the trees. It's hard to think outside the box, whatever one of those metaphors that you want to use. That's very difficult when we are really stressed out. So distress tolerance helps us downregulate so we can take a step back and be that impartial fly on the wall that can evaluate the situation and say, okay, let's look at what we're dealing with here. Distress tolerance skills can develop and benefit develop resources in your environment and benefit those resources in your environment. Distress tolerance skills, one of them maybe is activities, and sometimes you may engage in activities by going and volunteering or calling a friend and nurturing that relationship to just kind of remove yourself from the situation for a minute. So there are ways that distress tolerance skills can help you nurture your resources. And there are, when you have resources that you've nurtured, then those things are also there for you when you need to rely on them, when you need to call on them to help you with your distress. And distress tolerance skills, finally, will help you more effectively engage with others. If you are stressed, and I remember there were times when I was, working at community mental health, there were things that would happen that would go wrong, or maybe we were in the middle of an audit, which was always a little bit stressful. And it was important for me to use distress tolerance activities so I didn't misdirect my frustration or my stress onto other people and, bite the heads off of my staff or something. That really wouldn't have been helpful or productive. So using those distress tolerance skills, it helped me compartmentalize a little bit. We're not ignoring what's going on, but we're not letting it consume us either. We're recognizing that there are a lot of things that are important to us in our rich and meaningful life. There are a lot of things in our life that are likely going at least okay, if not pretty daggone well, even if some things really suck. And distress tolerance skills helps us with that radical acceptance and awareness. 4 things. Now, if you are familiar with Marsha Linehan, she has 2 acronyms, accepts and improves, that she uses to highlight distress tolerance skills. I found that, or the way I interpret them, a lot of those overlap and they can be distilled down to 4 basic things. And I know when I'm stressed, it's a lot easier for me to remember 4 things than, however many that is, like 11 or something. So, tags. Thought replacement. Now, Linehan calls it thought stopping. What I don't like about thought stopping is a lot of us have a hard time clearing our mind. If we stop thinking about something, what are we thinking about? We have difficulty just stopping thinking. That is a really challenging and advanced mindfulness skill. So I call it thought replacement. And when you are having these distressful thoughts, let's just go with waiting to get test results back from the doctor, because I think all of us have been there a time or two. That you go to the doctor, you get your blood drawn, whatever, and the doctor tells you, okay, we'll have the results back in, 5 to 14 days. And you're like, really? That's a long time when you're waiting for answers, when you're anxious about something. So during that 5 to 14 days, thoughts about worst case scenarios may pop into your head. Anxiety about what the results are going to be may pop into your head. Thought stopping or thought replacement involves saying, okay, acknowledging, all right, this thought is coming in. I don't want to think about that right now, because dwelling on it is just going to use a whole bunch of my energy, and it's not going to change the situation. It's like sitting in the mud with your car stuck in the mud and just revving the engine and spinning your wheels. You're just getting further and further stuck and wasting more and more energy. So with thought replacement, you have to have a list of thoughts to replace it with. And it's important to make that list ahead of time about empowering thoughts that encourage you to keep going, thoughts that remind you of all of the things that are important, thoughts that can help you cope with the situation. So if you start thinking about those results, you may say, you know what, I'm not going to dwell on the worst case scenario. Probability is it's going to be fine. And even if it's not, there are steps that I can take. There are things that I can do. You can rationalize it that way, or you can replace it with something completely different. If I start having stressful thoughts about something, sometimes I will just start singing a song. I will pick one of the songs that I really like, and I can't, maybe some people can, but it's hard to focus on the lyrics of a song and sing and think about something else at the exact same time. So that diverts my attention. Thought replacement can be helpful. You can also use prayers here. You can use meditation. What you're trying to do is silence that nagging voice and replace it with other thoughts that are empowering, that tell you that you're safe, that are encouraging, that are supportive. A stands for activities, and these can be activities that distract, divert energy, and or increase your happiness. There's a lot of things you can do. You can volunteer, you can contribute, go out to a park and pick up trash. You can volunteer to help a friend clean out their garage. You can go out and do something you enjoy, like gardening or going to the gym, or, heck, if one that diverts energy, I don't know if I would say I enjoy it, is cleaning. So sometimes you have a lot of nervous energy and you just need somewhere to put it. And distress tolerance activities help you redirect that energy. Freud would have called it sublimating, but whatever. Distress tolerance activities that you can use take that energy, and instead of using it to dig deeper into the mud and waste your energy, it says, okay, I have this energy right here. What can I do with it that might be useful, that might distract my attention for the time being? And then some of those activities obviously can also increase happiness. You can listen to comedians. You can watch a funny show. If you can silence your mind long enough, you can read a book. I have difficulty with that sometimes. I will admit reading a book is not my go-to distress tolerance activity because that nagging voice in my head is really loud and obnoxious. And sometimes it makes it difficult to actually focus on the book. But you can figure out activities that you like to do. I suggest to people that they make a list of 10 activities. 10's just a nice round number. You can choose however many you want. And have them on your mobile device in case you are at work and you start getting stressed. And make sure there are things that you can do when you are at work. Where I used to work, the complex that was where we had all of our buildings. We had trees and there was a little pond and there were places that I could go that I could see wildlife. And y'all know I love squirrels. And I would get some peanuts. I had some shelled peanuts in my drawer in my desk, and I would go out and I would feed the squirrels for a few minutes. Just take a minute. Some people will go out and just walk around the building. Some people will find it more effective to exercise for a minute. So if you're in a building that has a stairwell, going and walking up a few flights of stairs may help divert some of that anxious energy. Guided imagery can also be very useful. When you are stressed, going to your, for lack of a better phrase, quote, happy place can be helpful. Now, with any of the distress tolerance activities, when you experience distress, now remember, we've talked about this before, when you experience an activation of that HPA axis, your stress response system is going off. That is your body's way of saying there might be a problem. It is sort of the smoke alarm of your brain. It doesn't mean there necessarily is. It says there might be. So it dumps a bunch of energy. So you've got that energy to go look around and see if there's a threat. If there is a threat, obviously you don't want to engage in distress tolerance activities. You want to get safe. Once you're safe, then you can start figuring out how to handle your emotions. With guided imagery, obviously, you want to be in a position, a place where you are physically and emotionally safe before you can relax enough to really go to that happy place. And with guided imagery, I have several different videos on the YouTube channel that walk you through different types of guided imagery. But my favorite kind is really using all of your senses to make as three-dimensional and immersive of an experience as possible. You can even have, white noise machines that have birds in the background or something if you're going to a place that is like the forest where you might hear birds. Even if you don't have external sounds, you can envision, you can imagine, you can remember the sounds, you can remember the smells, you can remember what you feel from the sun warming your skin to the breeze coming out of the west to the dampness in the air. Really get as detailed and granular as possible so that experience is as immersive as possible. Why? Well, you know what? When you're trying to think, all right, what are all the things that I see here right now? What are 5 things that I see? Your brain is focused on going back into those memory banks and rustling through all of those files to try to figure out what are 5 things we generally see when we're in this place. If your brain is doing that, it's not focused on whatever is distressful, whatever thought you're trying to not think about at that point in time. So you're literally turning your brain's energy and attention somewhere else. And finally, sensations. And this is one that is really helpful for people who feel extremely overwhelmed and overpowered by their emotions. It's helpful for people who engage in addictive behaviors or even to some extent non-suicidal self-injury. Now, if you're engaging in self-injurious behaviors or addictive behaviors, obviously it's important to consult a counselor or your doctor for intervention. You don't want to just, randomly choose things that may help. You definitely need to seek professional assistance. But it's important to recognize, too, that there are things out there. Holding ice cubes or putting your hands in an ice bath. I've told you all before that I've got carpal tunnel, and when I go out and I do a lot of gardening, my hands swell up and start to go numb, and it's kind of unpleasant and painful. Well, one of the ways to deal with that is to put my hands in an ice bath. Well, that is equally, if not more, painful. And I'll tell you, when you have your hands in an ice bath, whether it's to avoid inflammation or just to distract yourself, you ain't gonna think about much else. So ice bath is one way. Splashing cold water on your face is something that's much less aversive, much faster. Doing 20 push-ups or 20 sit-ups, that can be helpful too because you're getting your heart rate up. One of the activities that I have some of my adolescent clients do when they start to feel extremely overwhelmed or distressed, they can go to the bathroom at school, go into a stall and put their back against the wall of the stall and slide down until their thighs are parallel. These are called wall sits. And believe it or not, if you've never done these before, in about 20 seconds, your thighs really start to burn. And holding that, you're not thinking about much else. Once your thighs start to get really sore, then doing that. And sometimes that can help redirect their energy for a second so they can regroup and get into their wise mind. They can downregulate that HPA axis so they can think more clearly, more broadly. Other sensations that can be helpful include things like aromatherapy. It doesn't have to be something unpleasant. Smells, for example, are one of our greatest memory triggers. So having something that helps you feel calm or triggers a positive memory can also help jar you out of that distress place and into a place where you're reminiscing over something that was positive, or even it reminds you about something you've got coming up. You smell it and you're like, oh yeah, I can't wait till I go on that vacation. Or my mother's perfume, smelling that too. When I smell that triggers certain emotional reactions. And knowing what you can use that can help you feel happier, calmer, safer, more empowered are all important for distress tolerance. Once you've downregulated your HPA axis and, gotten into what Linehan calls your wise mind, then you can step back and say, okay, now, this is not exactly what I would have chosen, whatever the situation is. However, what are my options here? You can see options. You can be more flexible when you are not in that adrenaline haze, when you are not having that tunnel vision. So distress tolerance is helpful to downregulate your HPA axis so you can think more flexibly about it, and also to help you tolerate the distress until you get to a place where you can deal with it. For example, if you get upset at work, it may not be appropriate to display that at work. Most of the time it's not. So you have to downregulate and, maintain your composure. And then when you get home in the evening, maybe you call your friend or you talk to your significant other and you go, oh, let me tell you what happened today. And you can kind of emote, vent, whatever you want to say. You can get some of that stuff out then. Distress tolerance is not a substitute for dealing with whatever's causing the distress. It just helps you until you get to a point where you are able to, cognitively and environmentally, you're able to deal with that distress. What distress tolerance activities are helpful for you? Now, going through Linehan's, I'm going to try to remember all of them. There are activities that obviously we talked about those. Comparisons, comparing yourself, how you're doing in the present moment to times when you've been doing not so well, so you can see how far you've come. And you can put that into the thought replacement category if you want. Contributions, emotions, do things that trigger positive emotions, which again goes back to activities. P, and I'm trying to remember what P was right now. Thought stopping and sensations are accepts. So those are things that, pushing away. P was for pushing away unpleasant thoughts, which, all of that kind of, you can put those either in any of these four categories here. So there are a lot of granular ways that you can look at distress tolerance activities. If you want more suggestions, obviously looking at the worksheets. And if you Google DBT and distress tolerance, you will find a plethora of different suggestions for distress tolerance activities. But most of them can be categorized as either thought replacement activities or changing your thoughts, activities that distract, divert energy, or increase happiness, guided imagery, and sensations. So for this presentation, that goes with the mnemonic tags. I hope everybody is having a wonderful week. I hope you have been able to take a moment and recognize, identify, see, whatever word you're looking for, some of the good things that are going on right now. It's, there are almost always some unpleasant things going on in just about everybody's life, but it's important to also recognize and take stock in the things that are going well for you, and are going well in your little corner of the world. That can help you feel more empowered and less hopeless and helpless, which is obviously where we want to be. Or should I say more empowered and more hopeful and safer. Everybody have a marvelous day. Tomorrow we're talking about cognitive aspects of behavioral health, and we're going to be focusing on hardiness and optimism. So we're going to build off of distress tolerance activities tomorrow.